The following quote was written by a man named Mark Twitchell. Quote, "This story is based on true events. The name and events were altered slightly to protect the guilty. This is the story of my progression into becoming a serial killer." End quote. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of John Brian Altinger. Viewer discretion is advised. On October 10th, 2008, a man was lured into a garage, which was actually a kill shelter, and that man would be brutally murdered by a Dexter Morgan wannabe serial killer. John Brian Altinger was born on April 28th, 1970, and he was born in British Columbia, Canada. John grew up in a very loving home, very loving family, and he himself would grow up to be kind of like the ultimate nerd. He grew up essentially in the beginning of the home computer era. So by the 80s, by 1982, I believe, his family would purchase a Commodore 64. Came with a huge keyboard, a massive, gigantic, heavy screen, and this is not when CD-ROM was around, so it only had a floppy disk drive. And it boasted a whopping 64 KBs, or kilobytes. Whoa, calm down. He quickly fell in love with like text-based, adventure games. I remember personally playing like one of the original King's Quest games. I think it was King's Quest 3 or 4 that I played first. You had to literally type in every action, like walk, run, talk. Yeah. Eventually, as technology progressed, he would find a way to, start interacting with people through the computer. And he would meet some friends that way, some very good friends of his. He would go by the alternate username on the computer, and I guess it was Ulta Magnus, which is based on a Transformers character, I guess. John's family, who would call him Johnny, would describe him as a very quiet, soft-spoken, but very compassionate, loving guy. Very affectionate, a very giving person. By the time he was 38 years old, he was living in his own little bachelor's pad, a very small, almost studio-type apartment. And this was in Edmonton, Canada. Not only did he love computers, but he also loved sort of the more daring stuff. He had 2 motorcycles of his own. He also loved to go out and play paintball. But he did appear to be missing one thing in his life, something that he was trying to find. A girlfriend. So John would eventually start using a website called Plenty of Fish. I'm sure most of you guys are aware of it. Through that, he actually met a lot of good friends of his that he had until his passing. He was trying to find a girlfriend, but eventually would just find friends. But he still pursued the ultimate goal. On October 10th, 2008, John would tell some friends of his that he was planning to meet a girl that he met off Plenty of Fish, and her name was Jen. And this is, by the way, always advised to this day. You make sure, if you're going to be meeting someone online, especially someone you have never met before, I would always recommend you tell at least one person, if not 2. Tell them where you're going, who you're meeting, give them any and all information you possibly can. That's not exactly what happened here, but it was pretty close. He did give a lot of information to his friends, which we'll discuss here in a minute. At any rate, the date was planned for October 10th, 2008. A couple of days later, no one's heard back from John. They were trying to find out, of course, how the date went, how did it go, but he wasn't responding to any messages. But then, on October 13th, 2008, John had sent out, the same email to a whole bunch of his friends. He said the woman he met, Jen, they hit it off instantly, and they decided to take a very impromptu trip to Costa Rica. Okay. But to his friends, something seemed very off about the email itself. It didn't sound like John, because John would usually end his emails with some sort of joke or a dad joke type thing, something quirky. He would always use happy emojis, but none of that was in the email whatsoever. A couple of days after that, one of his friends noticed something kind of haunting. John had updated his status on his MSN Messenger. Wow, that is taking me back. Holy shit. And the status update said, "I've got a one-way ticket to heaven, and I'm not coming back." At this point, some of his friends decided to basically break into John's apartment because they knew something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. When they got inside, John was nowhere to be found. It looked like he hadn't really gone anywhere though, like to Costa Rica, because his suitcases were still there and his passport was still in the apartment. His dishes weren't done. So this is when they notify police and say, something is wrong with our friend. We don't know where he is. We need help. One of John's friends would tell police that John told him about meeting this girl, Jen, beforehand, obviously. Apparently, John was not actually given an address to meet this girl, but instead, he was given very detailed directions on how to get to the location where John would be meeting this girl. And it would lead to a garage. So this friend of John said, are you really sure you want to do this? This seems very strange. But John was insistent. He really wanted to go. So John's friend said, okay, well, at the very least, I need you to call me, text me when you get there to let me know everything is fine. When John got to the garage, he did call his friend, and he said, well, there isn't a girl here. There's like this guy, and he's making a movie. He has like prop weapons and other props here. The garage was like a full-on like studio. Later that night, John sent an email to that same friend saying that he was going back to this garage because the woman was there. John had sent the detailed directions to this friend, so the friend gave that information to police, and thank goodness he did. Police were now treating this as a possible missing persons case. Police would go to this garage and they would discover that it was owned by a 29-year-old man by the name of Mark Twitchell. Mark Twitchell was born on July 4th, 1979 in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Mark grew up loving film, he studied film, he was obsessed with movies. He really wanted to make his own big blockbuster summer epic type movies. He in particular really loved the Star Wars films. He would later go on to graduate from the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology. He graduated in 2000 from the Radio and Television Arts program. In 2001, he married an American woman, and he would end up moving to the States. They lived in Illinois for a little bit of time. But in 2004, they would divorce. After the divorce, Mark would move back to Canada. Apparently in 2007, Mark wrote, produced, directed his own Star Wars fan-made film that was like a prequel of sorts, but it never got released. It never got picked up. It never got anything. So, Mark managed to meet the police at the garage. He told detectives that the garage acted as his film studio. And, that's all it really was. Well, police noticed there was blood in the garage, and Mark was like, oh, don't worry about that, it's fake blood, it's just all props because we're filming a scene where someone's being killed, so, yeah, it's just fake. He told them that this movie they were making was about a man in a hockey mask who would lure unsuspecting people to a garage where the hockey mask man would kill them. Oof. Yikes. Okay. Next, they noticed that John's car was parked near the garage, but John was nowhere to be found. So they're like, what's this about? Yeah, that guy, John, I think the guy you're asking me about, he had come here and he sold me his car for $40. So I said, why not? I bought it. Okay, there's about 1,000,001 red flags going on here. But there was no physical evidence at that exact time to be like, all right, dude, you're under arrest for something. They didn't have anything, but eventually, it took some time, but eventually police were able to get a warrant to at least search the cars and then possibly the garage. And they were granted that warrant. So they searched the car that Mark Twitchell actually owned. That was his actual car. In the car, they found a hard drive. And when they gave that to their computer forensic people, they found some deleted files on the hard drive. One of those files was titled SK Confessions. SK, maybe that stands for serial killer. The document started with this passage. It said, quote, "This story is based on true events. The names and events were altered slightly to protect the guilty. This is the story of my progression into becoming a serial killer." Okay, red flag, alert, alert, all the alarms. Yeah, this guy's something's wrong. Through this, they also learned that Mark Twitchell was obsessed with the show Dexter. In particular, he was obsessed with Dexter Morgan, the fictional serial killer who was a person who killed, but only killed bad people, from what I know. I've never seen it. I guess he was like a vigilante serial killer type. So they looked farther into this document, the SK Confessions, and it was apparently like a story. It was a story about a man who successfully lured another man to his garage and murdered that man, chopped him into pieces, and hid his body throughout the area. This story also mentions a second man, which was a attempt that went wrong. He lured a man to the garage, but the man escaped. When Mark was confronted about all this, he just said, guys, it's just a story. It's a screenplay, I guess. It's something I'm working on. You know, it's not real. Police didn't believe him. I understand. They also didn't believe that he just bought John's car for $40 because nobody would do that. So, police wondered, was there a second man? Well, they would soon find out, because once the story broke the news, a man did come forward to say he may have been the second man. It was a man by the name of Johnny Altinger. Back on October 3rd, 2008, Johnny Altinger would meet a woman on Plenty of Fish. Her name was Sheena, and she gave him very detailed instructions on how to get to where they will meet. She did not give an address, and the directions led to a garage. When Joel gets to the garage and it opens slowly, he says it's not a woman standing there, it's a 6-foot-tall man wearing a hockey mask. Before Joel could really react or do anything, he was struck by a stun baton and kind of knocked down to the ground. The hockey mask man then took some duct tape and tried to wrap it around his eyes, but Joel managed to tear the tape off. He then saw a gun. He grabbed the gun that was nearby, but turns out it wasn't real. It was a prop gun. He then started to just punch and kick at Hockey Mask Man, and then he turned around to kind of flee, but then Hockey Mask Man grabbed him by the jacket and started to yank him back. But then Joel managed to wiggle himself out of the jacket. And then he then rolled underneath the garage, which had been closed almost all the way, but not quite. And then he almost got away when the Hockey Mask Man grabbed his legs, started to pull him back inside. But then he kicked and kicked and kicked, and he managed to escape his clutches. Joel, not really knowing where the hell he was, he just sort of took off down an alley. He saw a couple standing down there and asking them for help. And then all of a sudden, a man in a hockey mask starts to run down this alley. The couple's like, fuck this, and they run. Joel manages to run and double back. He still has his keys on him. He manages to get to his car. He gets in, turns it on, and speeds away. He escapes. He got away. He survived. Then, a week or two later, it happens to Johnny Altinger. He sees the news. He sees the stories. He then goes to police. Why didn't he go to police originally when this happened? He was extremely embarrassed that he got catfished. He didn't want people to know that he was lured to a place and possibly mugged. He thought it was like a mugging situation, not that it was like, I'm going to be murdered situation. So, police would then test the blood found in Mark Twitchell's garage. They also found a broken tooth in the garage, and there was DNA inside that. They also found blood inside the trunk of Mark's car. All of that blood, the tooth DNA, all tested, all came back, and it matched Johnny Altinger. So, Mark Twitchell was then arrested, and he was charged with the murder of John Altinger and also the attempted murder of Jill Terrelt. Mark says, "I killed John in self-defense. Let me explain." You see, Mark said this entire thing was a big old publicity stunt. He wanted to catch men live and with their genuine reactions to something very scary, like suddenly being lured to a garage and having a hockey mask killer chase after them. He wanted to see what the reaction would be, film it, and then he could make a movie out of it. And he said eventually he would just let them go, of course, but this was all just, it was just a stunt, it was fake. He says that John was like, you're not putting me in any movie. He said he got really confrontational, and then a little fight broke out, and Mark had no choice but to stab him, and he killed him. Yeah, okay, Mark, okay. So, Mark would go on trial in March of 2011. The prosecution would bring up quite often his obsession with Dexter Morgan, and that it kind of inspired him to do what he was planning to do. The difference being is that, like I said, Dexter Morgan killed bad people. He killed killers or pedophiles or whatever the case may be. I'm not really sure. But Mark was really just killing these innocent, unsuspecting men who did nothing wrong. No more wrong than, say, the normal person would have ever done. So he really wasn't the same. They also brought up another document that was found on Mark's computer, and it was called A Profile of a Psychopath. And this was like a self-analysis of his own behavior and his own thoughts. The jury didn't buy the self-defense thing, as probably nobody would. They instead found Mark Twitchell guilty of first-degree murder, and they convicted him and sentenced him to 25 years to life. Now, the prosecution was not allowed to also present charges of the attempted murder of Jill during the same trial because they claimed it was two separate, unrelated events. I mean, one could argue that it's pretty much the same story, but whatever. So the court said you have to present the attempted murder in a separate trial. And so once the prosecution secured the conviction and they got 25 years to life, they instead decided, and I believe they talked to Jill about this, that they decided ultimately to just drop the charges because he was already going to be in prison for a very, very long time. Because 25 years to life doesn't mean he gets out at 25 years. He could very well spend the rest of his life in prison. Just 25 years means he could possibly go for parole, but likely will be denied. You know, had John not emailed these detailed directions to his friend, we may not even be here talking about this right now. He may never have been caught. I mean, eventually it sounds like he probably would have been, but it may have taken a lot longer, and more men may have died during all this. So it's a very good thing he emailed those directions. And again, I would always tell people, especially nowadays, always tell someone where you're going. Always give all the information you possibly can. If you have if you get a picture of the guy's license plate, guy or gal, whoever you're meeting for the first time, send that license plate or driver's license or whatever to a friend or someone close to you and trustworthy, and then tell the person, like, listen, I have sent all of your information to my friends and my family, so don't try anything, because if you do, they know exactly who you are and where you are. That is my biggest recommendation, is definitely do that to possibly prevent stories like this. It may help. It may actually save you. You never know. So just give as much information as you can get and send it to someone or a couple people you trust dearly in case something does happen. So, 18 months after the initial murder, Mark Twitchell would tell police where to find the body of John. He would then end up confessing that, yes, he bludgeoned and stabbed him to death. He then chopped his body into small pieces, put them in garbage bags, and just threw those bags into a nearby sewer system. Believe it or not, after all that time, those bags were still there, and they did recover the body of John Altinger. Mark would also go on to admit that he had broken into John's apartments to send all of the emails that he sent to make it look like he had gone to Costa Rica, but his friends quickly did not buy it. In 2013, get this, he was able to purchase a television for his prison cell or the rec room or something, I don't know, where he said he was finally able to catch up on all of the episodes of Dexter that he missed. What a great way for Mark's story to end. Ugh. Why are they rewarded these things? Why? They're in prison for a reason. They murdered someone. This man murdered a person. He was going to murder at least 2. We're going to... whatever. He's locked up. We live in a world where you cannot trust anyone, especially strangers that you meet online. Just be super cautious when you meet someone for the first time. Try to meet them in public the first few meetings. Don't go straight to their house or their apartment. Don't go to a garage. Just be super, super careful because you have no idea who's on the other end until you finally see them in person. And this is probably why I'm slowly becoming agoraphobic. But that is it for this case, ladies and germs. I hope you found it interesting. If you do want to see a significantly more amount of cases from me, but in much shorter form, you can head over to my now dormant TikTok page, where I have well over 2,000 videos. Until it gets permanently banned, it's there for you guys to scroll through videos and watch all the cases I have over there. I'm not posting there anymore. I'm done with it. This is my new place now. So, yeah. If you're seeing this for the first time and didn't know, I'm off TikTok. I'm on YouTube now. So, let's subscribe to me here. Next, if you have a case you would like me to cover, please email me at mikey@truecrimerers.com. I'm very backed up with emails right now, so please be patient with me. But once I see your email, I'll add it to my list. But please, before you recommend me a name, go to my link tree, which is in the description below. Click on the Crimerer case list. Scroll through the list. You can also search on your phone or search on the computer, wherever you're at, to find a name. If you don't see that name, then email me. If you do see the name, please don't email me. I get inundated with duplicates all the time because no one looks. Lastly, if you would like to support me in any way, you can check out my merch store, also in the description below. I sell shirts that say, "Hello, True Crimerers," and other shirts that just has my basic logo on it. We sell hoodies. It's getting into the chilly weather season, so we sell plenty of hoodies with different sayings on them. Black, gray, white, I believe are the colors. You can even do rainbow font for the LGBTQ. See, me, part of it, yeah. We also sell mugs and wine glasses, and we do, for right now, have a Christmas ornament up. It's just my logo with the Christmas hat on. Very popular last year, so if you'd like to purchase that for your Christmas tree, go ahead and head on over there and purchase that. It's also in the link tree in the description below. All right, True Crime Maroonies, that is it. So, until next time... If you play that backwards, it's a satanic ritual. Oh, no, it's not. No, it's just mumbo. It's just mumbo jumbo, Mike. I don't know. What am I doing?